Welcome back, listeners, to a brand new episode of the New Standard. You're checking out the program this week. Want to apologize for not being able to give you a post game. I was at my daughter's soccer tournament. Congratulations to EAFC for a fantastic tournament, coming in second place. So you're listening to the new program, the New Standard, still JV in too many areas, to quote Mike Tomlin. As always, if you want to participate in the program, hit me with a like and a subscribe, please. That helps us with the algorithm and it helps to grow the show. Also, we're going to be putting the show out via podcast a little bit later this week. I think we're going to have this serve as the show for Wednesday as well. And so, you know, we'll just do it that way in terms of for this show this week before we jump into the regular season as we get into the last preseason game. I want to give a big shout out to Coach Hatch for his comments that he shared with me on X pertaining to Broderick Jones, number 77, tackle who struggled minorly in the game against the Buffalo Bills against Greg Rousseau. He gave me his comments on that. We'll jump into that. Also, we'll jump into my overall thoughts of the game. I want to jump into some comments that Bill Belichick made on Pat Meyer's show. Excuse me, not Pat Meyer. Yeah, I think it's the Pat Meyer show on ESPN. The former kicker, punter, place kicker, whatever he played for the Indianapolis Colts. Pat McAfee, actually. It's the Pat McAfee show. Pat Meyer, I believe, is the name of the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But let's jump right into it. I thought Belichick, just let me give you my overall thoughts. Let's jump into the injury stuff first. Nate Herbig, it looks like he's going to be out for the season. He tore his bicep. What that means is that's going to thrust Zach Frazier into the starting position. But the issue now is who's going to be the backup for Zach Frazier if he gets hurt. So I think where the Steelers did had some depth in terms of their interior offensive line, uh, that issue, those issues are, a little bit of an issue now that Nate Herbig is hurt. I think when you look at Zach Frazier, we pointed out the positives from the first preseason game. I thought you saw more of those in this game. He looks like the task is not too big, has a very good ability to get to the second level, clean exchanges. I think he's going to be fine. I think we're going to look back at this moment and prayers up for Zach Frazier with his injury. But we're going to look at this moment as Steeler fans and say, this was the start of the Zach Frazier era. I think Zach Frazier is going to be a very solid player and a very good player for the Steelers for years to come. I think that was the bright spot with the Steelers' offensive line. Not too many other bright spots. Very, very bad game in terms of pass protection, and we'll talk more about that. And so, jumping into Belichick's comments on the last injury, excuse me, before we jump into Belichick's comments on the Pat McAfee show, Jalen Warren's going to be out possibly for the first week with a hamstring injury. That's a big blow to this offense. This offense doesn't have a lot of juice in the first place, namely, not a very good second option, receiving option, or number two wide receiver option. I think Jalen Warren, honestly, and I agree with Jim Wexell that Jalen Warren is the Steelers' best offensive player. I think he's the most dynamic and most consistent. And I would put him above George Pickens because George Pickens makes splash, but George Pickens isn't consistent. And again, I keep harping on that in these shows. But again, I don't think George Pickens is a guy that you can spam targets to, and they need him to do that. I think his effort at times can be questioned. I think JT O'Sullivan did a great job on his podcast, The Quarterback Room or The Quarterback School, in illustrating his inconsistent effort. I think also with George Pickens, too many combat catches. And some of that is the scheme has to get him open and free into some areas to where he's not actually always in a position to make combat catches. So I think that needs to happen. And hopefully we will see that But jumping into Bill Belichick's comments, the first comment he made in talking about the Steelers offense is that he liked Arthur Smith, thought Arthur Smith was a great OC and right for the job. And I would agree. I think Arthur Smith runs solid stuff. I don't think that Arthur Smith's stuff is revolutionary, but I think it's solid stuff. Anytime you can average 30 points a game with Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback, you're running solid stuff. I think ultimately, I think too much credit is given to coordinators and too much blame is given to coordinators. You have to have jocks and joes. I mean, you have to have the guys. You have to have guys to have a very good offense. If you don't have talented skill players outside the quarterback, you need the quarterback to elevate the offense, or vice versa. You need your skill players to elevate the offense. So I think I would agree with Belichick. I think Arthur Smith has showed he can scheme up a very good running game and a very good play action passing game. So I think that Arthur Smith is a solid choice. Also, given the fact that he has 8C head coaching experience, I think that's solid as well. I think that will be pivotal in terms of the relationship with Mike Tomlin. He understands the chain of command and how things work in terms of that relationship between head coach and coordinator. Again, listeners, hit us with a like and subscribe. You're checking out the program Still JV in Too Many Areas. And that is a quote attributed to Mike Tomlin in describing this offense. And that's something that Mike Tomlin says all the time when the team is not playing at varsity level, meaning they're not playing at a clip that's sustainable to win games, or they're not playing at a clip that can win games, and that they need to be more varsity in certain areas as opposed to JV. Belichick also said on the program that Russell Wilson won't be the problem. I agree somewhat to what Belichick is saying. I think Russ won't be the problem. And it goes to another comment that he made on the Pat McAfee show, that Tomlin will go with the guy who will protect the ball. I think that will be Russell Wilson. But I think wrapped in that comment from Bill Belichick is Russell Wilson won't be the problem, but he also won't be the solution. Meaning he is not at a point in his career where he rises tides. I don't think he's playing ball at a level where he can elevate an offense that doesn't have great offensive weapons. So I don't think Russell Wilson will necessarily be the problem, but I don't know if he's the solution either. They're in a position, I think, with either Fields or Wilson, that they need a guy that can elevate the offense. There was a saying, and I always get cliches wrong. Do you have a caboose, or do you have a driver, or something like that? Well, the analogy is, if you have a driver, do you have a quarterback that's driving the offense? Or do you have a caboose, a guy that is being elevated and he's along for the ride and he's being driven by the offense and other players in the offense? I think that's the larger issue when it comes to the Steelers is I don't think either quarterback, Fields or Wilson, can drive and elevate the offense. And I don't think the offense right now has the weapons to elevate and push and drive and bring the quarterback along for the ride, where the quarterback can just be efficient within the system. And because the skill players are so good, the offense is good. So I think they're kind of stuck there. Now, pot calling the kettle black, the most obvious thing is what Belichick said is they need to get the O-line and the run game fixed. Let me jump into, and a lot of target is on, rightfully so, is on Broderick Jones. And rightfully so. He did not play well. He did not play his good football. But Brojo is a young player, and I still think the arrow is pointing up. Listen to the comments from Coach Hatcher. And Coach Hatcher's outstanding high school coach, state of California, fantastic coach, does a great job with this program. Program is one of those programs in Cali, if you know what I'm saying. He's a great coach. And I always like to get his thoughts because he coaches the position. And so what he said in his comments was, I wish I knew what Pat Mayer was teaching him, but he seems tentative and plays way too high and obvious pass pro. Let me break that down a little bit. Go back and look at the games. When the Steelers are in third and long situations, look at his body. His body is giving the vibe of, oh shit, I gotta pass protect. Oh shit, I'm not getting any help from a chip or a tie-in. I'm on an island. He kind of looks like when he's in pass pro 1v1, he's thinking he's in here. And the saying always in football is, if you're thinking, you're stinking. Things look a little clouded for him. Things look a little complicated for him, that he's in his head. And so another thing that Coach Hack said is pass pro can be aggressive. You can't just get caught lunging. When you look at his body position, he's out over his skis, and he also plays way too high. That's technique, though. That's why I still think that the arrow is pointed up with Brojo. It's technique. It's stuff that he has to clean up from a physical perspective and an athletic perspective. He has those gifts and quality in spades. And this is something that I think all of Steeler Nation is thinking. And it really resonates when Coach Hack says it because, you can confuse a player. You can ask a player to play different spots, do too many different things, and you can confuse a player. Things can get too fast for a player when you don't give the player room just to play and settle in and start learning from the mistakes that they are making. And Coach Hack said, following the last couple comments he said was, I think they need to settle on him in a spot and let him play. This means moving him back and forth from right tackle to left tackle is messing with him. I agree. He looks unsettled. He looks very unsettled in pass pro and as a player. Let the kid play. Calm down. Let him play right tackle. Let Big Troy play left tackle. And let's get this moving. And I think Steeler Nation has to be patient with him and with the young tackles. These guys are young. So to Belichick's point, they've got to get the O-line fixed because they've got to get the running game fixed as well so they can stay on schedule so their young tackles aren't put into positions where they have to protect consistently and obvious passing downs. They have to take some of the stress off their tackles again and stay in third and manageables. Because if they stay in some bad down and distance situations, we've seen it could get ugly. Because Big Troy didn't play well in the first game at the right tackle position. So they're going to have to stay on schedule. And they're going to really have to try to protect these tackles because you can't always keep guys in to protect for these guys because that takes away the number of guys that you can get out in routes. I mean, you can't go 12 personnel and put 2 tight ends on the ends and protect your tackles. You can't do that all the time. So these guys have to step up and they have to run the ball well to keep these guys out of these bad situations. He also said, Belichick, that Tomlin will go with the guy who protects the ball. And that goes back to the comments about Russell Wilson won't be the problem, but he won't be the solution either. Justin Fields won't be the starter. I agree with Belichick. I don't think there's a quarterback competition. Tomlin will go, and Belichick said this, with the guy who is going to protect the football. That is going to be Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson is going to take the check down. That's what I saw in Denver, him taking the check down. getting off of stuff quickly, taking checkdowns, and not putting the ball in harm's way. With that being said, that's a good thing. But what I also notice is that Russ leaves plays on the field. But if you're going to choose between a guy that fumbles 2 exchanges or a guy that leaves some plays on the field, gives you a chance to win by not turning the ball over, you're going to always pick the guy that's going to protect the football. He may not make a ton of plays, but he's not going to put you in disadvantageous situations where you will lose the game. Also, I think the one thing when you're looking at both of these guys is Fields and Wilson in terms of who Tomlin will pick and who's going to be the starter. And we know it's Wilson. Both guys take sacks. Both guys take a lot of sacks. And that might be something that points to Justin Fields because of his escapability and his ability to get something with his legs that they won't stay behind the sticks because they take sacks. Russ takes too many sacks. Fields takes too many sacks. I think when you look at their sack totals combined, they took over 100 sacks last year. That is not good for this offense. And that also echoes back to the point from Belichick. They got to run the ball. They got to get the run game fixed. A lot of this is going to lean on Najee Harris early in the year. So if you get a chance to see the segment with Belichick on the Pat McAfee show, I thought it was an outstanding breakdown. Again, you're checking out the new standard, still JV in too many areas. Please like and subscribe to the program. Let me jump into Trai Essex comments before we get out of here. And let me end this program with a ray of sunshine. And Trai Essex said also, 77 will be just fine. He's having a tough game today, a very tough one. Every old lineman, no matter the pedigree, has one of them, sometimes multiple ones. He's a young player. It's preseason. Do not overreact to it. Does he have to get things cleaned up? Absolutely. Will he get those things cleaned up? We shall see. I still think the arrow is pointing up. I think it is way too premature to get into these knee-jerk reactions of, is he a bust? Too early. However, had a bad game. Had a terrible game. A lot of things that can be corrected. Hopefully, they declutter the player's mind. He looks like a player that has a lot on his mind, that he is thinking about it. Oh, shit, I've got to pass protect one-on-one in this obvious passing situation. Okay, do I keep my hands here? He looked like he's thinking. He's not playing, just playing aggressively and playing free. The last thing Trai Essex said was, let me preface this by saying it's been a very small sample size. But from my point of view, the play calling for Russ in this game versus Justin has been starkly different. That is extremely tough for a young O-line and a new offense with a new OC. Not making excuses for new individual battles, for losing individual battles. That's just getting your ass beat. But as far as cohesion, that's tough. Again, I think Trai makes solid points. There are a lot of moving pieces. You got young players, new OC, new scheme, new structure, new quarterbacks. A lot of things in play. That's why I keep urging Steeler Nation, be patient. You've got a ton of moving parts with this team, and they play a well of a defense with a lot of pieces in Atlanta in the opening game. Things will be okay. Things I'm looking for in the next preseason game is obviously offensive line play. I need it to be cleaned up. I'm looking for a rebound game from the offensive line. I'm looking for one of the quarterbacks to lead them in a touchdown drive. I'm looking for better continuity and cohesiveness and cohesion with the offense. So it's the last preseason game. We'll see. Troubling game, but it's preseason again. Don't make too much of it. But with that, we're going to conclude the program. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.